Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Kerry Fisher back joining me again. Hi Kerry.
Thank you for having me. Hello there.
So, a little bit about Kerry for those who don't know her. Kerry writes contemporary women's fiction for women who've lived long enough not to expect the fairy tale. I love that statement.
That's
Um,
me.
she's written 11 books, 10 novels, and a non fiction memoir, sold over 1 million books worldwide, and her work has been translated into 13 languages. The themes she loves to explore in her writing are those centered around complex family dynamics. In particular, the five people in a room and everyone having a different idea about what was said or intended. Syndrome that currently seems to affect families. Her next book is set in Rome, where she spent a month in March, realizing a long held dream. She lives in Surrey, UK, with her husband, who's desperately trying to get to the top of the pecking order. But her younger adult children keep boomeranging back, and now her nephew has come to stay. Fortunately, she loves cooking, gardening, and having a household of people. And her latest book is The Woman in My Home. I have to say, I recently read it. And as with all of your books, I've really loved it. I've read a few of yours now. I think it's probably the fourth I've read now. So just wondering if you want to
Oh,
tell
thank
us a little bit about The Woman in My Home.
you. Well, I'm going to have a here, there you are, wrong way round, but there you go. It's so I got the inspiration for this book it was a newspaper article about a woman who had she was bright, intelligent, successful, she had her own business, but she'd been completely taken in by a con man. So I started thinking around that. And at the same time, I had another idea about how much cleaners know about the people they work for.
Mm.
And so I married up the two ideas, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to pull it off originally, but actually I really liked the idea of somebody sort of unobtrusively observing what was going on in a household and probably seeing way more than the person who owned the house thought they would be seeing. I mean,
Yeah.
I would be, honestly, if I went into somebody's house, I would be so nosy. I definitely could never be a cleaner that said, "Oh, don't worry, I never look at anything."
Yeah.
I mean, goodness knows what I'd be looking at what was in their bin and peering at their
Mm.
letters, and that I'm just fascinated by other people's business. So never come and never let me in your house. So I married up those two, and they're very unlikely allies. But I don't want to spoil the plot of the book. Throughout the book, they become closer, although they didn't really like each other initially. So that's basically the premise.
And when you started writing, did you know how it was going to end?
Um, Well, initially, there were two versions of this book. So initially, I had a bit of a jollier ending,
Okay.
where all the different characters got together and they were. But actually, my editor said, "I think this is a bit too uplifting for. I mean, it doesn't have a terrible ending, but she thought it was a bit uplifting for the slight psychological drama that it was. So I changed the ending, and actually, I was really. Some people have hated the ending, and some people have loved it.
Okay. That's interesting. You changed it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And could you tell us, like, when you first start writing, maybe this book in particular, is there a certain way that you start off? Do you write notes, or I know some authors have like sticky notes and.
Well, Bookature that I'm published by, the way it works with them is that you have to write a full synopsis of the book before they'll agree. I always agree with my editor basically, and that's often quite a long process. I really trust my editor. She's very, very smart and very. She can always pinpoint what's the weak point in the book and force me to make it better, even when I'm at the stage of I just want to start writing now. But it's a really good discipline. She's very, very good. So I start with a full synopsis, and I don't always stick to it exactly, because the way my books evolve is character's always the thing that drives my books. I'm always, as soon as I start writing and I get a really good feel for who the characters are, then I can feel it's almost like an engine comes behind the book once I've really understood who they are and what motivates them. So that's how I work, really. I mean, in the early days, I just used to write and see where it took me, but I've learned that takes you down a lot of blind alleys, and I have very tight deadlines, so I can't afford to waste time.
And we've got quite a few people watching, which is great. Just reminding people watching, if you do have a question for Kerry, please type them in comments and I can read them out. I've got a question from Sharon. She wonders how you choose your characters' names.
Now that's a really good question. And the one thing I really wish I'd done, 11 novels in, is make a list of my characters' names.
You're not the
because
first
there are
author
some names that automatically appeal to me. And then I'm like, I've already used that name. So what I actually do is bring up the government census. If I've got a character who's born in 1965, I will bring up the top 100 names for that year and try and pick one I haven't used before. But it is tricky because some characters, as I see them in my head, aren't an Irene or an Elaine or whatever the most popular names are for that year. I do have to find the right name, otherwise I feel a bit uncomfortable all the way through the book. And actually sometimes right at the last minute I've gone, no, I literally can't go with Jane. It has to be this. It does happen.
And when you're writing, have you got any writing rituals?
So it's not a very good ritual, I'm disappointed to report, but I seem to, so I have to walk every morning. Somehow that just gets me in the right frame of mind. So I usually walk for 2 hours every morning, get home for 10:30, and then I try desperately to be at my desk by 11. And then annoyingly, I have to faff about on social media for at least half an hour or so. It just seems to get my brain into the right zone. Even if I'm really up against the deadline, I think, right, I can't afford to be faffing about. I just need to get on with it. I can't seem to make it happen, but I am getting better recently because it's summer here and it gets light early, which wakes me up. I'm starting to think, right, I'm going to go up. I go upstairs in my pajamas before I don't even go downstairs and get a cup of tea. I'm going to go and write 500 words and then I'm going to go out. And actually, that's great because that's very quick at that time of day. But if I leave it till later, it can take me hours. It's just silly. I don't know why I don't do it more often.
Yeah. And you've written a lot of books and they've all been very popular. I'm sure you get lots of feedback from readers. I'm wondering, is there anything that you could share with us that you maybe heard from a reader that really surprised you or was very weird or something like that you could share with us?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. Over the years, I've had, because I write about emotional subjects, so adoption, women who are estranged from their adult children, domestic abuse, I have been astonished in a good way and touched by how many messages I've had from readers over the years. In particular, The Silent Wife, which was about domestic abuse. I don't think I understood until I wrote that book how common it is.
Yeah.
I have been staggered by the amount of messages I've had about it. I'm just trying. There are so many that have really touched me. I had one this week, and it was about the woman I was before, actually, which is about what people put on Facebook and what their real lives are like.
Yeah.
And it was just a really nice message, but it's just fresh in my head, from a woman who said, I've been listening to it on audiobook, and every night for a few hours, listening to this makes me forget about my worries and how difficult my life is. And I thought, that's just such a nice message.
Yeah.
You know, that was lovely.
Yeah.
But I've had quite some very touching messages about adoption, but from both sides, actually. Some from birth mothers who've given their children away, and some from adoptive mothers, saying that it helped them understand the other side more easily, and it made them feel less threatened. And so that's been really lovely.
Yeah.
But actually, my favourite message was from a postman who said, I haven't picked up a book in 10 years and I couldn't put yours down.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
I love that. I just had a vision of him sitting there in his little red van, you know, in between work breaks, having a read of this book.
No, it must be great to get messages like that.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely. It makes my day. I love it.
And you do have a lot of really interesting characters in all of your books, and lots of interesting interactions. If you could be a character from any of your books for a day, who would you choose and why?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I'm actually writing a book. I'll come on to that a bit later, set in Rome, with a really feisty character. I like feisty characters, but I would still go back to my debut novel, The Schoolgate Survival Guide, or The Not So Perfect Mum. It's had lots of different titles, so it's got two: The Schoolgate Survival Guide and The Not So Perfect Mum. And there's a sort of aging hippie in that. She has a trust fund. I mean, that would be quite nice. But leaving that aside, she just doesn't care what people think of her. You know, people come round. She's got a messy old big rambling house. She's got wellies in the sink, and clothes drying all over the Arga. And she really doesn't care what people think. And I think that might be quite a nice place to get to. I'm getting there. As I get older, I do care less and less. But actually, being Clover for the day would be quite nice.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And can you tell us a bit about your next book?
So as you said in the introduction, I was privileged to spend a month in Rome in March. It was on our bucket list, really. I used to live in Italy when I was younger, and I'd always said, as soon as we could leave the children at home safely without them absolutely trashing the house, that we would take off for, it's always a close run thing. We'd take off for a month. And so we had this month in Rome, which March in the UK is just a grey, drizzly month. But in Rome, it was gloriously sunny. So every morning I got up, we were staying in a little Airbnb and we'd sit in the garden and in the sunshine, and I'd be like, I am literally living my best life. I loved it. So I'd actually intended to take some time off this year. But of course, when I was in Rome with all that lovely architecture and all those fantastic little doorways to peer through and see all the courtyards beyond, my little brain started to pick away at a story idea. And I was thinking, sorry, this is a bit of a long-winded answer, so stay with me. I was thinking, because we'd had 2 years of pandemic, I hadn't done much travelling. And I was a bit more nervous. I've travelled a lot, but actually being in a big city that I wasn't really very familiar with, it was a little bit of a test of my confidence, just hopping on buses like I used to when I was 20, not worrying about anything. And I started to think about how often we lose confidence as we get older. I worry much more about getting a train up to London now than I used to when I used to hop on a plane to Australia in my 20s without giving it a second thought.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, haven't got my ticket. Oh, I wonder if the trains are running on time. And it started me thinking about how often women, lose their mojo a bit as they get older, and what it would take to rediscover that. So that's what the book's about. It's a little less dark than I normally write,
Okay.
and I'm going with the kind of uplift, let's all live joyfully and well for as long as we possibly can vibe. So
Yeah.
and I have to say, I'm loving writing it.
Oh,
Really loving
that's
it.
great. Yeah. Yeah. And sounds like a great book. When will that be ready for people to read?
So it's an interesting one. I was talking to my editor about it, and she said, right, it would be great to write a series. So I said, okay. And she said, if you want it out next summer, you need to deliver 2 books by February. And I was like, okay, that's kind of tight, but it's doable.
Yeah.
So I'm aiming for next summer, unless and because I'm really enjoying writing it and I can't wait to get back to it, the writing's actually quite quick.
So you're saying your new book will be a series?
Yeah, so it will definitely be 2, and I'm thinking it might be 3.
Okay, that sounds exciting.
It is.
And I'd like to know what you've been reading lately, and if you want to recommend anything to us.
Yes, I was just looking down my Kindle list when we were chatting earlier. So I have read recently All My Mothers by this is the trouble with Kindle. I'm going to do her a disservice. It's either Joanne or Joanna Glenn. I can't remember whether it's Joanne or Joanna. And it's just a really lovely book about how different female figures can act as a mother figure in your life. But it's set in Cordoba in Spain. So that there's that lovely sort of lemon tree, orange tree vibe going on, and I do like reading books that are set in nice locations. So that was definitely one of my best reads recently. And I've also read, I was saying this, I've just recently joined a book club, 10 random local people. So it's quite interesting because we've all got very different tastes in reading. But we had a real life book club last night at my house, and we'd all read Crying in H Mart, which is it's a memoir, basically about a mixed race woman who's half Korean, half American, and how when her Korean mother is dying, she feels this need to understand all her mother's recipes so she can carry on that family tradition. So there's a lot about food, and it's not what I would normally choose to read, but actually it's lovely to be pushed out of your comfort zone. And it was interesting. It was, I don't know anything about Korea or Korean food, so it was actually really enlightening.
Well, thanks for those recommendations. Kelly wonders, what has been the best part of your writing journey?
There have been some surprisingly wonderful things about it, as well as some surprisingly unwonderful things. But the best part, for sure, has been how much readers like to interact. And I don't think a day goes by when I don't get a message or a Facebook post about something that the book has brought up for somebody, because of course we all take our own life experience to how we receive a book when we're reading it. And it's been very interesting lots of readers have been very generous in sharing their stories with me. So I think that's definitely the best part. And also I've met lots of other authors that I wouldn't normally have come across. And there's almost a quick fix to friendship because you have this great big passion in common. I
Yeah.
mean, not all of us, but I do sometimes meet people and I think, oh, you're such an interesting person, and in my life I wouldn't have come across you otherwise.
Mm,
So that's been lovely.
yeah. Do you have any authors that as soon as they have a new book out that you have to go out and get it?
Yes, I'm a big fan of. I like. I'm going to say this name wrong, I'm sure. Is it Moriarty or Moriarty? How do you say
Moriarty.
Liam?
Moriarty.
Moriarty. Um, so I love her books.
Mm-mm.
We had Big Little Lies on TV over
Yes.
here, and
Yeah.
I was glued to that.
Mm,
So I like her. I like Jodie Picoult. I've recently been reading a lot of Elizabeth Strout's books, the Olive Kitteridge, Olive, and I've also started listening to audiobooks recently, which I don't know why it took me so long to discover them. I love it, when I'm
yeah.
walking. So that's, that gives me extra reading time. Yeah.
Yeah. And Belinda wonders if Australia is featured in any of your books.
Australia hasn't featured in any of my books, except I did have a character who was emigrating there in one of my books. It's so embarrassing, but I actually forget completely about my characters when I move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
That was in the mother I could have been. I really love Australia. It's actually my favourite country in the world, and I'm not just saying that because you're Australian. I love it. I love the space. I love the positive attitude. Everything about it. I love the cuisine. My son loves it as well, so I'm slightly crossing my fingers that he doesn't decide to emigrate. I wouldn't stand in his way, but it would make me a bit sad. But I don't actually feel that I know it well enough to write about it, which is a
maybe
very good
you'll
reason
have to come
back
for
research.
a research trip. Yeah, you'll have to come for a
Absolutely,
research trip.
I would love to. It's a constant topic in the house because the young adults still don't, obviously, they have better holidays if they come with their parents than if they have to pay for their own.
Yeah.
So there's a real sort of pressure to get us back to Australia before they really are too old for us to bankroll.
And could you tell me, for the women in my home, do you have a favourite part in the book?
This makes me sound a bit. I don't want to spoil it, but
No
there's a little romance in the book, and I'm literally not romantic. Honestly, if you can put the bins out for me, you're my hero. I'm not, I'm not a woman that needs roses bringing every day, or any of that sort of thing. I think my husband would like it if I was, but I'm not. I'm like, just put the bins out, love. I'm happy. But there is a little romance in this book which just kind of touches my heart, because I think one of the protagonists really deserves that, and I wish her good things.
Yeah.
So I have written, and that's the glorious thing about writing. You can actually write people a happy ending, which is much harder to achieve in real life.
Yeah. And when you're writing, do you share what you're writing or sound off anything with maybe your family or friends? Or
it's an interesting one. I actually talked to my daughter's 20, but she's very emotionally intelligent. So I will, if I'm struggling with something, I will run it past her, but she's probably the only one, because one of the things that I've discovered over the years is if you talk too much about a book before you actually write it, it's almost like the air goes out of the idea, like a sort of cake that just. I try to write it before I've done too much discussing, so that I've still got all that energy and joy before 10 different people have gone, I'm not sure about that. I don't think, because then it makes me doubt myself. Creativity is a very fragile thing and can easily get squashed by other people's opinions. So
Yeah.
as my daughter says, you need to back yourself, Mum. It will work.
Good advice. And for the women in my home, have you been able to go out more for publicity for it? Have you been able to do more in-person things?
I mean, obviously, we're all just living normally now, although I have to say COVID rates are rising alarmingly. I have been out and done a few author talks, not really for publicity. I'm trying. I do like to give back because it's nice. At the beginning, I was very privileged to have some very good mentors who really helped me on my writing journey. And it's hard, sometimes when you start writing, there are some really obvious things that will bring your writing on in leaps and bounds, but you just need somebody to say them to you.
Yeah.
And you'll have a little light bulb moment. So I do try and go out and do talks, but I've been out a few times, but I don't do actually. I mean, I'm so lucky that my publishers are so brilliant. They take care mainly of the publicity, and I don't have to do too much of that.
And is there any advice you'd like to give to a new writer?
So my first piece of advice that isn't really related to writing is you're going to have to believe in yourself long before anybody else does. And I didn't come from a publishing background. I didn't know anybody in publishing. And it does feel quite intimidating. But really, if you want to write, there's always a good excuse not to do it because everybody has busy lives. But you need to almost treat it like a job from the get-go. Even if you have a full-time job, just say to yourself, I'm going to write 300 words a day. That is doable for just about everybody. And if you meet that word count, you'll see your book start to grow, you get a feel for your characters, and it does propel you along. So I think that's my biggest advice. And actually, don't talk too much to people about what you're doing, because I find even now, even though it's my full-time job, people still treat it as my silly little hobby, and when am I going to go and get a proper job? And it can be a bit demoralizing. So just talk to people you trust, because actually some of my very best friends who I adore are absolutely disinterested in writing, or reading actually. So, and haven't read any of my books. So, and that's normal. My expectation was, I've got 50 friends on Facebook and everybody will rush out and buy my book. Whereas the reality is perhaps 3 did. But you can't expect people to share your enthusiasm.
No, that's great advice. Well, thanks so much for talking to me. It's been great chatting to you. If anyone hasn't read any of Kerry's books, hope you go out and look them up. There's some really, really great ones there. And like I said before, I've read 4 of them, I think, and totally enjoyed them all. And thanks for joining us again. I enjoy talking to you every time I've chatted to you. And
well, you're lovely to have me. Thank you.
And also thanks to everyone who joined in the questions. I hope I get a chance to talk to you again soon.
Okay, have a very good evening.
Thank you, and have a good day to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye, Jackie.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.